Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D-Shift podcast. And today, this, I think, is a conversation that if you're listening, whether you're going through the divorce, whether you're done with your divorce, whether you're trying to decide if you're going to get into a new relationship or make any kind of life changes, this is going to be a conversation that should be stuck in your head and give you some practical tools to make those choices. So I have a true expert on the show today. I'd like to introduce Mike Fink. He is a clarity and decision-making expert, coach, and innovator. He has a master's in psychology from Yale, and he works with women who are in that place where you're trying to decide, should I stay? Should I go? Is this a good relationship? Do I need to put more work into it? Or is it time to just say, I'm done and I want to leave? And so a lot of times my clients really struggle with that. And Mike has I think, an amazing program that I think in just 30 days, you can have a clear understanding of what is best for you. So, Mike, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mardi. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's like I said, it's my pleasure. And I'm really excited about this because I am a bit of a science geek about all the neuropsychology and the neurolinguistic stuff and how we tell ourselves these stories and we make decisions a lot more complicated than they need to be. So I want to hear about you, though, Mike. Tell us a little bit about why decision-making and specifically helping women going through divorce became a focus for you.
That's a great question. So I'm very passionate about my subject and the time is limited. So I'm going to try to give you as much as possible in the shortest amount of time. It all started with 20 years of expertise and 5 years of misery because I got involved in a 50-50 business relationship. So it was not a personal relationship, it was a business relationship, which also can be very powerful in terms of the commitment. The first 5 years were great, but the last 5 years were terrible because midway through, we realized that we needed to make some change to change the way we dealt with the market, with our customers. And this is when it became clear that we had different values, different vision. And that's when the clash started becoming more and more intense to the point where we're screaming at each other. I would have a hoarse voice. We would scream at each other in front of our top level employee, which I felt ashamed about after that. But the real factor it hit me that it wasn't that I was not happy in this business relationship. The terrible thing that was affecting me was the indecision about should I stay or should I go? And I couldn't sleep at night. I was being burned out because of all the conflicts and compromises I was making. And I kept asking myself, is it me? Is it him? Is it the relationship? Is he right? Am I wrong? What if I'm right? Then what's next? I will need to sell an asset to buy him out. I will have to start from scratch. You will leave me financially depleted. All questions that a lot of women considering divorce are probably very familiar with. And finally, when I hit my 50th birthday, that's when I did a life review and I realized I had made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I got the big decisions right, except for a couple of them. And one was having gotten in this business relationship. And I had developed over time a process. And when I finally applied my own medicine, I went from being confused, anxious, burned out to, now I know exactly what to do. My head was aligned with my heart, was aligned with my gut. It wasn't only about knowing what to do, it's how I felt about it. I just knew it was the right thing. And overnight, my life got transformed. Yeah. And people around me saw it. My top level employee, my spouse. It took 9 months to get through the logistics of buying him out. It left me financially depleted, but I just had this peace of mind that it was the right thing to do. I knew that I would never regret my decision.
Yeah.
And when I went through that, I further refined this process, and I realized I had put my finger on something extremely powerful because I was able to help my spouse's brother go from confusion and anxiety about a decision about his medical career. And he had been confused for 2 years, and in 2 hours, I took him from confusion to absolute clarity, and it just blew his mind. So I told myself, this is it. I need to share this process with the world and where to start, because as you and I discussed at the beginning, this decision-making process can be applied to a lot of different situations, and especially to the situations that involve a lot of variables and where the cost of failure is extremely high if you get the decision wrong.
Yeah.
And this divorce is one of those decisions, as you well know with your clients, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that whole summary. And I always think that the best coaches are people that have kind of been through the fire and come out the other side. But then not just that, because, let's face it, there are a lot of people out there that market themselves as coaches that have had a difficult experience, but they don't have necessarily the education and the understanding and and that's important. At least I believe it's important. So you're coming at this both as a person who's done this, but also a person who has spent 3 years researching this, and really more than 3 years because you've been doing it. But initially you started with 3 years of research. Now you've got, what is it, over 100,000 people you've helped, right? Around the world with this process.
Actually, the over 100,000 people was the first part of my career. During the first 2 decades, I was focusing on helping people in a different way. It's since 2021 where I had this life epiphany that I just shared with you, that I really completely abandoned what I was doing before to completely dedicate myself to decision making and helping women make this decision with confidence and peace of mind in 30 days or even less. It's that powerful.
Okay, so let's jump into that, Mike, because I do know that is your passion, and it's so obvious in speaking with you that this is something that really, really gets you excited about talking about this. So, what would you say is the first sign that you're in? I'm going to ask you a difficult question. What's the first sign that this indecision is weighing you down and is getting you stuck? Are there any things that people tell you are common symptoms?
Oh, absolutely, because indecision has a real cost. Our brain craves closure. And when it asks a question, should I stay or should I go? It looks for an answer. And when it cannot have that answer, it goes in overdrive mode. And this is exhausting. So I get to speak to a lot of women, even those like probably the ones you're working with, who maybe have either separated or already started the divorce process, but they're still second guessing themselves, right? And this constant second guessing, weighing the pros and cons and being unsure affects their mental focus, their emotions, their self-esteem, their ability to work, their relationship with others, their health, mental and physical, and their relationship with their kids.
Yeah.
And basically, their life can be quite disrupted as a result. In fact, I even have a diagnostic tool for them to really understand that indecision has a real daily cost. And it's not just that they are in an unhappy relationship. The real problem they need to address is the indecision that is really weighing on their life and making things worse every single day.
I was reading a study, I think it was the University of Minnesota, if I'm not incorrect. They did a study on people going through divorce, and for 2 years around the time of the divorce, so preceding and after the divorce, they found that employees typically decrease productivity and decision-making ability at work by 40%. So wow. I want you to think about that. If you're an entrepreneur and you have to make those decisions, that's even increasing that cost of failure, right? Because not only are you dealing with all this emotional strain, but you could be making decisions that are not good for your business as well as your personal life.
Absolutely. I had clients who lose their job because they have gone down so much in performance that they weren't able to do it properly. So it becomes then a vicious spiral.
Right.
So let me jump into something very important because time is limited.
Yeah.
I have here, and I'm going to just describe what I have for your audio listeners, a brain mock-up. And the reality is that we don't have one brain, we have 3 brains. Now, this is important because people need to understand the real gatekeeper of the divorce decision. So at the bottom of the brain, you can imagine that the brain is composed like an ice cream cone with 3 layers of ice cream, one on top of the other. So the first layer is the primal brain, the reptilian brain, the lizard brain, the old brain. A lot of people have heard those terms. And this part of the brain was formed when there were dinosaurs around 500 million years ago. That's the first thing that we evolved with, and it is in charge of our survival. And this part of the brain is in charge of the fight or flight response, but also the freeze response. Now, this is really important because this is the part of the brain in charge of the divorce decision. Why? Because it cares for your survival. We are programmed to survive first. And it says, you know what? The divorce decision is such a high stakes, high cost of failure decision, because if you get it wrong, it will affect you, your kids, all areas of your life for the long term, that unless you are absolutely certain that it is the right decision, my job is to keep you safe And you know what? When in doubt, wait it out. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And that's why so many women, even smart, accomplished women, are stuck in indecision. Why? Because biology is stacked against them. We are wired for survival first and foremost. Happiness is kind of optional. So for a lot of people who are listening to this, if you're stuck in indecision, it's normal. You are just being subject to the status quo trap based on biology. So then we have a second part of our brain, that's the emotional brain. It evolved 200 million years ago. And then we have our most recent addition that came 2 to 3 million years ago, which is the rational brain, in charge of logic, of reasoning, and of language. So we just said that in order for you or for your brain to let you make a decision in terms of divorcing, and that's the one I'm going to talk most about given your specific audience, it needs to, your primal brain needs to be on board in terms of, okay, I get it. Even though divorce is challenging, it will be safer on the long term or even on the short term than staying in a bad relationship. But how do you convey this clarity and certainty to that part of your brain? Well, first, you need to have that clarity and certainty on a logical level, and then you need to convey to that part of your brain. The problem, though, is that this part of the brain evolved before the rational brain in charge of language. And that means, and pay attention, Marty, that your primal brain, the real gatekeeper of your decision, does not understand language. It does not understand words. And what do most traditional solutions have in common, whether it's marriage counseling, therapy, talking to friends, and so on? What do they have in common?
Talking. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, talking is important because you want to have logical clarity, but it's not enough to get all parts of your brain on board. Because otherwise, you might just be having a decision with your head. And I have a lot of clients who tell me my marriage counselor says I should divorce. And they may even agree with them logically, this but. And the but comes from that emotional resistance from the brain says, ho, 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 when in doubt, wait it out.
Yeah.
Unless you give me clarity and certainty, I'm not going to go anywhere. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah. And I love the idea of the ice cream cone. That's a really good visual, right? The top layer is not talking to the bottom layer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how do we get this clarity and certainty first on a logical level, and then we'll talk about how to convey that to the primal brain. The first thing is, in order for you to make an assessment as to whether you can save your relationship or not, is to have all the pieces of the puzzle. If you are in the market to buy a car, unless you have absolute clarity in terms of what you're looking for, whether it's reliability, safety, gas economy, whatever that is, if you don't have clarity on those fronts, you will not be able to choose a car properly and determine whether it's a good option for you or not. It's the same thing with a relationship, except that instead of 5 or 6 things that people value in a car, most women, most people have between 20 to 30 things that they value in a relationship.
Sure.
And if that sounds like a lot to your listeners, it means that they are missing critical pieces of the puzzle. So you cannot solve a puzzle if you don't have all the pieces. Step number 1 is what I call value mapping, which is a process that I describe in my book, Divorce Decision Decoded, is gathering the pieces of the puzzle. But then that is not enough because not all values are created equal. And here is a thought experiment for you, Marty. Let's imagine that you're looking for your dream house and there are 20 things that are important to you. And one day a friend of yours comes and says, Marty, I have found your dream house. He has 19 out of 20 things. Is that a good thing or not?
For me, it would be an okay thing. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
This is what 90% of people answer. Having said that, what if the one thing missing is location? The house is in a completely different city and state from where you want to live.
Sure, that would make a big difference. Yeah.
Everything else becomes a moot point, right? So this is why I say that values are not an equal vote democracy. They are a military hierarchy. It doesn't matter how many values are being fulfilled. What matters most is which ones are being fulfilled. So the next step in the process is what I call categorized ranking, where you go from really putting things in order. Once you know what values are important to you, you go to rank them from the most important one all the way down to the least important one. And then comes a critical distinction, which is understanding which values are essential for you, meaning non-negotiable, versus optional. And this is huge because otherwise people wonder, could I still save my marriage? And even marriage counseling can make things worse because if their spouse makes efforts but on things that are optional, now they have put time and effort, but they haven't done it on the real needle movers. And if you are thinking about pulling the trigger and divorcing, now you feel even worse potentially and more guilt. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yes, yes. And your spouse feels hostile because they made efforts, but they weren't
Yes.
recognized. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So that's a really good point. It makes the process not only worse because of your own guilt, but also because now they could be potentially more hostile.
Yeah.
So this is really important because I had this client, Tracy. She had a husband who was extremely messy, and something that was important to her was to have a tidy husband. And he would always drop the clothes on the floor, never put them in the laundry basket. He would leave the dirty dishes in the kitchen sink for 3 days. It would drive her nuts, and she would give him so much nagging, so much aggravation. She was focusing on that. But when we did the process, it turned out that she had 23 things that were important to her, and having a husband who was tidy not only was an optional value, but it was number 22 out of 23. And that was just a huge aha moment for her. She realized that she had focused time and effort on things that didn't matter. Now, the beauty of it was that she was able to also understand what things really matter because she had focused on that simply because as human beings, we're not good at understanding our emotions, right?
Right.
And all the unhappiness that she felt, she just looked around and said, why am I unhappy? Oh, must be because of the mess, right?
Exactly. It was so
It was part
visible.
of it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it was only part of it. So then she was actually able to identify other areas in her relationship, in the essential part, that were not being fulfilled, to focus on those. And in her specific case, she was actually able to save the relationship and make it work. But no,
Wonderful. Yeah.
essential versus optional is key because it enables you to understand, is this relationship salvageable or not? Because if there's too much that is not being fulfilled in the essential area, it's not going to work. But if there's only a few things, you will know that it's salvageable, and you'll also know what to focus on, what the leverage points are. Does that
I
make sense?
love this. This is so insightful. And that values alignment is so critical. So I'm with you, Mike. So far, I'm right with you.
Perfect. So let's talk about the next step, which is once you have done those two steps, value mapping and categorized ranking, you see it kind of provides you logical clarity and certainty. The next step is, how do we convey that to the primal brain? And we said that the primal brain does not understand words. What does it understand then? It understands images. It is nonverbal. It feels it when it sees it. This is why also when you watch a movie where you already know logically that it has a happy ending, like The Notebook. This is a movie that's popular with a lot of women, right? You know logically that Noah and Ali, they will end up together and have a beautiful love story. But during the first 2 hours of the movie, there's all the struggles, the challenges, the obstacles, and you go through those emotional, fears and struggles and anxiety. It's only at the end when your primal brain sees it, when they're finally together, that it feels the happiness. So this is really important. Based on that, I have developed the third step, which is the relationship decoding. And basically, it is creating a visual language to communicate, where I basically take all the essential values and visually contrast them with the optional ones by putting them in a different color-coded area. So it's all in dark yellow and they're all bold. So right away, when people look at the list, they have a sense, or their primal brain has a sense, okay, the thing I need to pay attention to is the dark yellow area because those are the essential ones, because those are the values that need to be at least acceptably fulfilled for you to have sufficient happiness to stay in that relationship long term. And the next step is to use, again, color coding and precondition association. So then we go one by one through each value, and each value we took the time to identify what it meant exactly, to know whether it was being fulfilled or not without a shred of a doubt. And then we color code it. If that value is being fully fulfilled, it becomes a green mark, a green dot with a check mark. What does green mean for the brain, Marty?
Go. Green means go.
Absolutely. It's preconditioned, right?
Yeah,
Green light.
we know that.
If the value is only acceptably fulfilled, it's blue because blue is more of a neutral color. But if a value is not fulfilled, or even if the opposite is present, then it's a red dot with a cross. And what does red mean for the brain?
It means stop.
Stop, no go, bad,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So all of a sudden, people can see and have an assessment of their entire relationship in a color-coded way that makes immediate sense to their primal brain, and that enables them to consider all the variables all at once, because they can immediately see, is my essential area more in the green area, in the blue area, or in the red area? And it's remarkable because when I show those case studies to people that I talk to on the phone, they are able to, I ask them, do you think that this relationship can be saved or not? And within seconds, they say no. I say, yeah. And what makes you say that? And they immediately see, there's too much red in this. And it's mostly about, the most important values. So I had the story from Kate. She had been confused for 5 years whether to divorce or not because her husband was a good guy. And by the way, a lot of women told me, I wish my husband was a jerk. Why? Because
Because
if he
it's
was a quote
easier.
unquote jerk,
Yeah.
the primal brain in charge of their protection would say, okay, I get it. It's better to move on. But when your husband is not a monster, that's when you're stuck in the status quo. So it came that he fulfilled 70% of her values, which is not bad, quote unquote, but we saw that it doesn't matter how many values are being fulfilled, but which ones. And when we did the assessment, it turned out that out of 17 values, she had 7 in the essential areas, 17 essential values that were not being fulfilled. And most importantly, 4 out of the top 5 were not being fulfilled.
Right.
So she saw, you know what? Yeah, he has a lot of good things going for him, but not in the right areas.
Right.
And finally, she had clarity that her relationship could not be saved. And that's when she was able to move forward with divorce with peace of mind, being able to know what she wanted to do, why she wanted to do it, being able to explain to her spouse and to her kids while looking them in the eye why it was the right decision with peace of mind. And to make a decision without any fear of regret. She just knew it was the right thing to do, regardless of the ultimate outcome. Does that
Right.
make sense?
It does. And I know we don't have much time, and I could see having this conversation go all day with you. This is fascinating. I really love it because it not only is it a structured approach, but it resonates, it just makes sense. I've heard you on other podcasts, which is why I was really excited to be able to have you on this one. And every time I've heard you speak, it is just hammered home, literally, that we have, everybody has the capabilities to make these decisions. What we don't have is the framework to make them. And what you're providing with your course is the framework in a very concentrated 30-day period. And you're right. Most of my clients, I ask my clients, all of them, how long have you been thinking about making the decision for a divorce? And on average, my clients say 18 months. That's my average. So think of that. A year and a half out of your life where you have been in this frozen mode, going back and forth and being unhappy with life. What if you could in 30 days get the kind of clarity and maybe it stay? And yay, that's what your program does, right? It's not all about get a divorce. It's is a divorce right or is trying to work on the marriage right? That's what I love about it. It's not one way or the other.
Absolutely. And you said something earlier, which I think is really, really important. It's all about being aligned with your own values and being authentic. Because when you make a decision from your authentic place based from your true self, number one, you'll make the right decision for you and also for your kids. We don't have time to expand on that, but really it will make it so that it will be the right decision for you. It will feel right on all levels. So being authentic and aligned is really one of the most important things.
Yeah, I cannot agree with you more. And Mike, we may have to have you come back and go a little more in depth on another podcast later on this year to maybe talk about that. Now, how do you convey that information to people? How do you talk to your kids? How do you help that? So with all this fantastic information, what do you think is the most important thing that you want listeners to walk away from this podcast and keep top of the mind?
I would say 2. The first one I just shared with you, which is being authentic and being aligned. And the other one is really understanding that whenever you have a tough, life-changing decision to make, you need to address the real gatekeeper of your brain, which is your primal brain, because otherwise biology is stacked against you. So you need to have logical clarity and certainty, but then to really use the visual communication channel to make sure that all parts of your brain are on board. So stop berating yourself or feeling like a failure because you cannot figure it out. There's a reason why, but there's also a solution to that reason.
Yeah, thank you for that. Mike, what is the best way for people to find out more about your course, your program, and your book?
So if people want to get absolute clarity, you can go to getabsoluteclarity.com. That's my website. So 3 words, getabsoluteclarity.com. This is where you'll find a link to get the book easily on Amazon. This is also a place where you can contact me if you want to find out more how we can work in person and how I can help you get the right decision with confidence and peace of mind in record time. So getabsoluteClarity.com.
And I wanted to say, Mike has different programs. So, there's not just one option there. So go to the website, take a look, and then reach out to Mike. I know he's, as you can tell, he's very insightful and very willing to share information. So, Mike, I can't thank you enough for being here today. I know you've helped me because I've got a decision I'm making, and this is going to help me get some clarity on that. Thank you for that, and thank you for what you're doing for people going through divorce, because making that decision is a big first step. So, thank you so much.
My true pleasure. Was a delight to be on your show, Mardi. And again, thank you for helping me express my life mission and spread this revolutionary methodology to as many people as I can. So we're both on the same team of light.
I think so. Yeah, it's so nice. And thank you all for listening into this episode. If you have any comments, questions, reach out to me or reach out to Mike. I'll be happy to do that. And don't forget to listen in for the next episode of The D Shift. Thanks for listening and supporting the D Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.